This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's September 4th, 2025. On this day in 1861, a pair of British scientists presented a paper suggesting the world needed standardized units for measuring electrical resistance. These were, of course, the heady early days of science figuring out what harnessed electricity could do. The telegraph was already a thing, but folks were still figuring out how to make wires that could carry a signal over long distances. Heck, they were only about 25 years beyond the point when folks seriously thought they could lay a bare copper wire under the English Channel and use it to send a telegraph. No shielding or protection of any kind. Electrical resistance was a really important part of creating wires that were useful for that purpose. And scientists needed to be able to clearly quantify what they were doing and communicate about it with each other. The terms volt and ohm came from that paper, both of which honor philosophers of earlier generations. Watts, as a measurement of power, came about 2 decades later, named for the Scottish inventor James Watt. But the world had to define volts first, because a watt is what you get when 1 amp of current flows across an electric potential difference of 1 volt. Please don't ask me to explain any of that. It just is, okay? And as a non-scientist, the decisions to define the words volts and ohm and watt mean I can't just use those when I need to talk about electricity. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Well, it's a good thing we can measure and define all this electric power, along with other kinds of energy usage like gas and coal, because Tennessee uses a lot of it these days. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, or EIA, our state uses roughly 3 times more energy than we produce. Part of that comes from the fact that almost all of our fossil fuels are brought in from elsewhere. There's a little bit of coal mining in East Tennessee, but that's about it. But we have a lot of logistics companies that use an awful lot of gas and diesel to move things around. In fact, logistics firms are our biggest energy consumers in Tennessee, followed by manufacturing. Household power use accounts for about 1/4 of our appetite for energy, and the commercial sector then rounds out the power draw. But when you add it all up, Tennessee lands in the top third of the nation for overall energy consumption. And as of the most recent available data set, only about 5 to 6% of the energy we consume in this state comes from renewable sources. Narrow the focus to electricity, and more than 90% is made by the Tennessee Valley Authority, 22,000 megawatts each year. But again, there's relatively little use of renewables in the TVA portfolio. Now, WPLN's environmental reporter Caroline Eggers has produced a lot of deep coverage of the ongoing saga about where our power does come from. Some of her most recent reporting told us that TVA suffered 5 shutdowns at nuclear reactors over the past year. That's a lot of lost capacity, a 30% drop in nuclear power production, to be specific, which gets replaced by power from plants that burn fossil fuels. And it highlights a reliability issue at a time when our summers are quite hot and our winter freezes hit pretty hard. If you're here around Christmas time in 2022, you may remember an Arctic blast that killed a lot of shrubbery around the mid-state. It also prompted rolling power outages while families were gathering for their holiday celebrations. TVA simply could not make enough electricity to handle the draw that came from everyone's heaters working overtime. And that's become the fear ever since. Whenever the forecast looks extreme in one direction or the other, there's a lot of reason to question whether our grid really is up to the task of meeting demand on a very hot or a very cold day. In just a few minutes, WNXP's latest Artist of the Month, Emily Hines. That's coming up after the newscast.
Here's the mantra I think about at WPLN. We connect the dots. It captures a mindset that our journalism is not merely about the latest press release or proclamations by officials. Instead, we can develop expertise, dig deeper, and look to history to understand what's happening now. I'm Tony Gonzalez, news director. When I'm planning coverage and editing stories, the best part is being part of a team that's curious about our community and invested in its future.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. A company that provides security in downtown Nashville is being fined for using deceptive practices. Solarin Risk Management repeatedly came under fire for its treatment of unhoused people. The State Department of Commerce and Insurance sued the firm over its use of uniforms that made their personnel look like on-duty law enforcement. The Nashville Banner reports the company could have lost its license, but instead a judge in the case decided to fine Solarin $2,000 for every violation, for a total of $64,000. Meharry Medical College and Nashville General Hospital signed a new operating agreement yesterday morning. It defines the relationship between the city's oldest medical school and the city-owned teaching hospital for the next 2 years. Unity was the message at the signing event. WPLN health reporter Catherine Sweeney tells us that is a major shift from earlier this year.
A who's who of North Nashville medicine and politics attended the signing event. They congregated at a tree-shaded plaza on Meharry's campus, right outside Nashville General Hospital's emergency room. Amid the fanfare, Meharry Medical College's Dr. James Hildreth and Nashville General's Veronica Elders signed the 40-page Professional Services Agreement, or PSA. This was a very different public spectacle than the one that unfolded earlier this year. In February, contentious board meetings, an unflattering audit, and derisive media comments culminated in Nashville General's Dr. Joseph Webb leaving the CEO post he held for a decade. Part of that conflict hinged on the former operating contract. It had expired in 2023, and agreeing on a new one seemed impossible. The change in leadership paved the way for a new agreement. Here's Elders and Hildreth in a joint interview.
Now we have a very transparent administration, which we have not had in the past.
And that makes all the difference. If the leadership is not buying into this, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
The new terms are on the books through the end of 2027. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
The new contract opens the door to negotiations on a new hospital. Mayor Freddie O'Connell says the current building is dated and has several infrastructure issues. The hospital's lease on the Meharry building also ends in 2027. All students in Tennessee's public and charter schools will receive firearm safety lessons. This is after the state became the first to pass a law requiring the training. That means kindergartners to seniors can expect to be introduced to gun safety and how to prevent injury, although the training will vary by grade level. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention list guns as the leading cause of death in children and adolescents in the U.S. Tennessee ranks 6th in the nation. Efforts to regulate firearms have stalled in the Republican-dominated legislature. Since 2021, Tennessee legalized carrying an open or concealed handgun without a permit, and public school teachers to be armed after meeting certain requirements. The Washington Post reports that several school superintendents were unclear whether they needed to submit the gun training for approval. Nashville just had its 7th hottest summer on record. WPLN's Caroline Eggers reports that this heat was especially strong at night.
Until this past week, Nashville basically didn't cool off this summer. The city often still felt like an oven well into the evenings. During one of the heat waves, the average low was nearly 80 degrees. That's partially because our humidity was so high. On the flip side, Tennessee's assistant state climatologist Will Tollefson says humidity kept a lid on our daytime temperatures.
With more humidity in the air, some of the sun's energy is going into heating that water and evaporating it from plants, from streams and rivers. And so that just keeps the actual sensible heat a little bit lower.
Compare that to our country's hottest deserts, like Death Valley in the west. Those places often get super hot, dry days and cool nights in the summer. But muggy cities like Atlanta and Nashville tend to stay in the 90s during the day and often 80s at night, while also feeling hotter. That's our local trend with global warming. Summers in Nashville don't allow escapes from the heat, and that's stressful on our bodies and minds. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
The matriarch of the Nashville Zoo's herd of giraffes has died. Nasha was an 11-year-old Maasai giraffe. Zookeepers say she was playful, loved interacting with people, and would do just about anything for a honey locust pod. In 2021, thousands watched an online feed as Nasha went into labor and needed veterinary assistance to give birth. Her calf died soon afterwards. Maasai giraffes are an endangered species native to Kenya and Tanzania. They generally live 25 to 30 years in the wild. A statement from the zoo says Nasha died from intestinal complications. But on a happier note, 2 red pandas were recently born at the Knoxville Zoo. The cubs, named Sisu and Dufa, are about 3 months old. Keepers say their mother should soon be ready to let them venture out of her den. When they reach that milestone, WBIR reports zoo visitors will get their first glimpse of the babies. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. On most mornings in the summer, Emily Hines is up at daybreak, harvesting the season's fruits and vegetables. This year, she's also been tending to the Garden of Song. Her debut album, These Days, was picked up for national release through a process as organic as everything else she does. Music reporter Justin Barney went to her home studio in Radnor to unearth more about the WNXP Nashville Artist of the Month.
When Emily Hines was 5 years old in Cincinnati, a family of 4 approached her parents, and they said that they needed a place to stay for a while. Hines is the youngest of 6, so there were already 8 people squeezed into their house. But her father was a family doctor who had taken an oath to look out for others. So the siblings bunked up and the household made room. The mother of the visiting family taught Hines how to play piano during her stay at the house. Later, some musicians came through for a stint. They taught her brother how to play guitar. The house was this folksy storybook revolving door of transients and artists living in community. But then, when she was 7 years old, the family received the terrible news that her mother had cancer. Doctors gave her a 25% chance of survival.
My brother and I wrote our first songs together for her when she was going through her surgery process, and when she came home, we presented them to her on our little karaoke machine microphone, and that was kind of my first connection with songwriting on my own.
Her mom survived. To make a new start, the family moved out to the country. They had chickens in chicken coops, and they all tended a huge garden that yielded a bunch of produce. It was kind of a new ecosystem. Inspired, Hines went to school at Trevecca Nazarene University in Nashville to study urban ecology and started harvesting produce in local farms here.
Here's a good okra.
Her album These Days started while she was picking vegetables.
I've been thinking about calling you.
I do feel like farming for you, when you're spending a lot of time outdoors, in nature, writing typically comes there seems to be a correlation with you between farming and being outside and the songs that come out.
That's the album's producer, Henry Park. Instead of going for audio perfection in the recording, Hines and Park used a more rudimentary tool from 1986.
Look at this thing.
This is a Tascam Porta 1. It's a 4-track tape recorder.
Right. Just as much as you do.
Hines' voice is delicate, with a slight Appalachian lilt.
I think I've always been drawn to music that comforts and consoles, because there just naturally is so much to grieve in this world, and we need spaces to come together and acknowledge that grief together.
When the album was finished, Hines released it online without much fanfare, but it found the right ears.
It bowled me over. I was really blown away with just how fully realized the record is, and just how it really creates this world.
That is Tony Presley, founder of Austin, Texas-based record label Keeled Scales.
I just found it to be really, really beautiful.
This whole time I've been trying to rip the skin off the snake.
He reached out to Hines via Instagram DM, and they signed a deal. No big viral moment, no celebrity endorsement, just the power of this song.
It was all coming along.
I feel like things like that, I don't really hear stories like that anymore. I always hear, independent artists really hustling so that they can get a following, so that they get attention from a label, and then the label kind of steps in when the train's already moving. But this album release was so much more organic and word of mouth.
In early August, Keeled Scales put out These Days. Hines celebrated with a show at the Blue Room in downtown Nashville. The audience reflected that old house. There was kids running around. At one point, the whole crowd sang Happy Birthday.
Happy birthday, dear Emily. Happy birthday to you.
I want to do everything I can to like take care of my community and promote peace, and I think growing food is a great way to do that. And that's kind of always coincided with like why I make music. It's because like I love people and want to like connect with them and want to see communities that are like strong and healthy and flourishing.
Emily Hines is in the business of nourishing the community, be it by seed or by song. For Nashville Public Radio, I'm Justin Barney.
I'm in my old ways again.
So WNXP is the half of Nashville Public Radio that is all about music discovery. And this podcast comes out of the other half of our organization, WPLN News. And thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN and WNXP is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.